In this module, we will explore the key and core concept of service management. This includes the relationship between value and stakeholders and examines various roles, key concepts, relationship, and the definition of utility and warranty. Begin by looking at the learning objectives for this module. First, we want to describe the relationship between value and its stakeholders. The term value is used a lot in service management and in our day-to-day life also, right? And also the key focus of ITIL 4, so it needs to be clearly defined. The stakeholders for service management include organization, service providers, service consumers, and other stakeholders. The three primary service consumer roles are customers, users, and sponsors. We will define the concept of value co-creation through service relationship, and this includes service relationship management, service provision, and service consumption. We will describe the relationship between product, service offering, and services. We'll also take a close look at the key concept of creating value with services. This includes outcome, output, cost, risk, utility, and warranty. And finally, we will recall the definition and what exactly it means from a service management perspective, utility and warranty. First thing I want to outline or ask all of you, what is service management? Before we start understanding IT service management, let's discuss some of the well-known IT framework and methodologies. Two key focus areas where ITIL or IT focuses on is project management and service management. We'll be spending a good amount of time to understand service management throughout this course. So let's spend a few minutes to understand project management. What comes to your mind when we say like project management? So project management deals with temporary project. So let's go back to the definition of project. According to PMI, a project is temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. A project is temporary in that it has a defined beginning and end in time, and therefore defined scope and resources. Right? Most of us, we talk about and we say, okay, I'm into a project. What exactly that means? Means that you are into a time-bound activity, right? A project has a start time and project has an end time. And the result could be anything. You can create a unique product or you will create a service or result, right? That's what project management talks about. And there are multiple frameworks which comes across, right? When we talk about, there are multiple frameworks and methodologies which has been used in IT, right? We have project management, which goes from PMI. We have Prince2, we have Agile, right? These are some of the project management. Then we have Scrum, like, so all these are the various methodologies which has been coming across. So from a service management perspective, we will be talking about ITIL, right? More or less, ITIL is the de facto standard for service management, right? It has been there for quite a while. We have seen that and how exactly it adds value. We have just seen in the previous modules into that. Then we have Verism, we have DevOps. So the list goes on. But before we deep dive into service management, we have to understand these core concepts. So try to understand what a project is and what a service is, right? So we will be talking in detail about service because the whole course is about service management. But as I said, I have defined what a project is. let's take what is the definition of a service. ITIL 4 defines service as a mean of enabling value co-creation by facilitating outcome the customer wants to achieve without the customer having to manage specific cost and risk. So what are the key words, right? From a service management perspective or any methodology you're looking into it, try to understand the key words which comes into it. So if I take from service, the key word is enabling value co-creation. In ITIL V3, it was delivering value. Right? Here we are talking about enabling value co-creation. We will see in detail about that. Right? We will see like what exactly it means and what is the difference between a delivering value and enabling value co-creation. So we were saying like we want to know more about service management. So here we have to start defining service management and work towards that. So what is the definition of service management? It's given over here. Service management is defined as a set of specialized organizational capability for enabling value to customers in the form of services. Realize that we are now enabling value for customers as opposed to delivering value as defined in ITIL V3. In addition, the word capability is being used in ITIL, right? So we have to see like what exactly capability means. Organizational capability. Are we having the right capability to provide value to the customers, right? That's where we have to start, and we have start looking into these key areas. So once again, I'll just go back to the definition which we are talking about. Service management is defined as a set of specialized organizational capabilities for enabling value to the customer in the form of services. Okay, let's define value. So value is the perceived benefit, usefulness and importance of something. Now the word perceived is important in this definition because the concept of value is always subjective. It depends on business case, whether it is derived from a product or from a service, as well as the relationship between all the parties, such as service level agreement, the organizational right, to name a couple of them. Also, the word something is purposely vague because it's more than just services. Developing the distinguished proficiencies of the organization demands that practitioners have an understanding of the nature of value, the aspect, and the scope of involved stakeholders. The way value creation is enabled through services. In a nutshell, the purpose of an organization is to create value for stakeholders. Let's talk more about organization. ITIL could be adopted by all type of organization. It could be legal entities like corporation, partnership, even a sole proprietor. It can be a public or private entity also. Right? It can be for a profit or non-profit entity. It could be even part of a company or organizational unit, a business unit, a department, a separate business under a holding company. So an organization has its own function, right, with responsibilities, authorities, and relationship to meet its objective. Right? We are part of an organization. So if you are part of an organization, so what it is a group of people, right, that has its own function, right, that has its own responsibilities and authorities and relationship to achieve certain objectives. Right? That's what organization and the definition of organization, which is. Right? How is value created? Traditionally, organizations consider their role as delivering value to their customers, like package delivering service. And there was a time when organization who self-initiated as service provider saw the role as delivering value to the customer in much the same way. This view created the relationship between the service provider and the service consumer as a monodirectional or unidirectional relationship, and it created too much distance between provider and the consumer. ITIL 4 moves away from the term and the concept of unidirectional delivering value to a newer bidirectional creating value. In other words, the provider delivers the service and the consumer receives value, but the consumer plays a role in the creation of value for themselves. This new approach takes into consideration the highly complex and interdependent service relationship that exists in the real world today. Organizations are consumers and providers of service and continually practicing to create or to co-create value. Organizations recognize that value is co-created through an active collaboration between the provider and consumer, as well as other organizations that part of relevant service relationship. So providers no longer try to work in isolation to define what will be the value to the consumers and users, but actively seek to establish mutually beneficial interactive relationship with their consumers, actively encouraging them to create collaboration in the service value chain is one of the key focus of ITIL 4. Service relationship management consists of joint activities performed by service provider and a service consumer to ensure continual value co-creation based on agreed and available service offering. Service provisioning consists of activities performed by service provider to provide services. Service consumption consists of activities performed by service consumers to consume services. Creating value is a two-way street as far as ITIL 4 is concerned. Before we do deep dive into the main service consumer roles, let's try to understand about service providers. When provisioning services, an organization takes on the role of service provider. For example, when we give a training, right? So training is a service which is being offered. So we become the service provider, right? But remember, the provider can be external or the consumer's organization. For example, Amazon Web Service, or they can be part of same organization, right? Let's take a simple example, like a service desk. The provider organization is the IT department of the company, and the other departments or the other functional units are the consumers. But this is very simple service consumer model. A provider could be selling a service on the open market to the other businesses, to individual consumers, or it could be part of service alliance, providing service to consumer organization. The important thing is that the organization in the provider role has a clear understanding of who its customers are in certain scenarios and who the other stakeholders are in the associated service relationship. So remember, when receiving service, the organization itself can take on the role of service consumer. So service consumer is a generic role. It's used to simplify the definition and description of the structure of service relationship. In ITIL V3, we had two consumer roles. We had customer and we have service provider. However, in ITIL 4, we have three consumer roles. The customer, the person who defines requirement for the services and takes responsibility for the outcome from service consumption. The user, a person who uses services, and the sponsor, a person who authorizes the budget for service consumption. For example, if the company wants to purchase mobile phone service for its employees from, say, any wireless, it could be Airtel or it could be Vodafone, who the service providers are. Right? There are various service providers and the various consumer roles would be this. As I said previously, in ITIL 4, we have three consumer roles. The customer, the person who defines requirement for the services and takes responsibility for the outcome from service consumption. The second one is the user, the person who uses the services. And the last one, maybe the important one, the sponsor, a person who authorizes the budget for service consumption. We were talking about mobile phone, right? So we wanted to purchase mobile phone services for our employees. The Chief Information Officer, the CIO, and the key communication team members will fill the role of customer. When they analyze the mobile communication requirement for the company employees, they will negotiate the contract with the service provider and monitor the carrier's performance against the contracted requirement. The Chief Financial Officer, the CFO, will fill the role of sponsor when they review the proposed service management and approve the cost of the contract as negotiated. And then the employees, all of us, or all of you, which will also include CIO and CFO, and the communication team members will fill the role of users when they order, receive, and use the mobile phone services as expressed in the agreed contract. These roles can be combined. For instance, it's common for a consumer to be a customer and a user. In the business world, sponsor and customer roles are often combined. As a service provider, it is important to recognize these roles and relationship for your consumers. Also realize that they may often have conflicting interest. For example, departments competing for budgetary dollars or certain people with valuable skill sets. There have been times when IT group and business skill group needs something to provide at the same time. A key focus of service management and of ITIL is the way that organization co-creates value with their consumers through service relationship. Later we'll be seeing like service relationship management as one of the critical focus areas for ITIL which has been there. Right? Apart from this consumer roles, there are also various stakeholders. So let's take the different stakeholders. For the success and even the continued existence of an organization, it is vital that a relationship with all key stakeholders are understood and managed. And that's where we talk about like this stakeholder management. Right? We have to know the right stakeholders. Once we know, okay, these are the right stakeholders to manage, we will be able to work with them effectively and co-create value. If a stakeholder is unhappy with what the organization does or how it delivers its value proposition, the provider's relationship and its consumer could be in jeopardy. So product and service creates value for stakeholders in a lot of ways. Some are direct, such as generating value, while others are more indirect, such as employee experience. Here we see three examples of common stakeholders: employees, stakeholders, and community. So for example, we could consider employees a direct stakeholder, shareholders an indirect stakeholder, and community as influencing stakeholders. And these three stakeholders have different goals. For example, the shareholders want a rising share price. They want dividend. Employee look at compensation, benefits. The community looks at charitable contribution or sponsorship. Now those don't really add to our core value chain, but they are very important. And there is a varying level when the goals overlap. For example, security. Also keep in mind that employees may also be shareholders or optional holders. In addition, all three of these types of stakeholder would be concerned with the organization adhering to regulation and governance. But the risk of loss for non-compliance would be different for each type of stakeholders. Here are some examples of other stakeholders in value: the board of directors, bondholders, lenders, creditors, venture capitals, strategic partners, trade unions, and government agencies. Other stakeholders would be suppliers, regulators, and various social groups.